right, thank you everyone for coming. My name is Amber Blake. I'm Assistant City Manager at the City of Durango, and this is Scott Shine. He's a planning manager for us. I would like to thank and introduce our Mayor, Dick White, so thank you for coming. He's right here. And we have a number of board and commission members in the audience that serve as on the advisory boards to City Council, so thank you all for coming as well. We have a number of city staff. I'm not going to introduce them all, but they are around the back of the room and you'll have the opportunity to meet them later. This is the largest public engagement process that the city has undertaken, and it is a huge breadth. And really, we can't do our jobs well without knowing what the values of the public are. So why are we here today? We are here at the direction of City Council, who have told us that they would like us to conduct a large-scale public process to gather feedback from the community on what your values are and what your priorities are. So how do we spend our money? How do we spend our time? How can we continue to make Durango great or greater than it is today? And we need your input to be able to do that. And as a local government, it's our responsibility to live within our means. So we are stewards of taxpayer dollars, and we need to make sure that we're spending those dollars in a way that reflects the values of the community, and we do that at the behest of City Council when they adopt the budget for our work program for the following year. So we as a community need to get ahead of what we're calling the wicked problem. And we do have a wicked problem that lies before us. So what is a wicked problem? I am not from Boston. I'm not just using the word wicked because it's cool. But wicked problems involve competing and underlying values and paradoxes and trade-offs that can't be resolved by science. So it's not a simple problem. It's calling for high-quality communication, creativity, and a collaborative approach and action by all of us to manage the problems. So I'm going to give you an example of this. If I said to you, would you like public safety services? Would you like transit services? And would you like affordable, attainable housing in Durango? Individually, if I ask you for just each one of those, my guess is that you'll probably say yes to all three. Now, when we have $1 that can pay for all of those together, where do you want to put that dollar? So it's that value piece where they're butting heads. So we have to make these tough choices, and if we don't know what your priorities and your values are, then how are we supposed to make the decisions that keep Durango great? So here we go, the wicked problem in front of us today. Without an increase to the general fund revenue, the current level of service that the city provides is not sustainable. So that is what we are doing today. No expansions for general fund programs. Ends aren't going to meet in the long run. So what's the purpose of this process? We would like to educate our community about the city's financial situation. We want to hear from you. We want to listen to your values and priorities and understand what your level of satisfaction is with the services that we're providing. And then we would like to collaborate on the whole with all of you as our community to make more informed decisions. So we're going to take all of the information that we can gather over the next 4 months in this process and use that so that we can take action on the community priorities. So let's get a little bit more into this wicked problem. So note at the top here, there's that red general fund. So we're looking at operating revenues versus expenditures. And here we are today in 2018, and the green line, which is revenues, is greater than the red line, which is our expenditures. By 2020, those lines cross. So I had a question from someone in the public a couple of days ago when I was sending out information, and they said, well, why are you doing this now? The lines haven't crossed. Well, when my car is on a quarter a tank of gas, I go to the gas station and I fill it up and I get gas because Lord knows we live in Southwest Colorado and I do not want to run out of gas. Same thing here. We see the lines crossing and we don't want to be stuck in that situation. We're going to have to make tough decisions, and we want to make sure that we know what the community feels so we can make the right decision. So that was operating revenues. Now we can talk a little bit about capital. Again, this is in the general fund. You may have seen this chart before when we did Cities and Towns Week in September. We had a big process that the chamber helped us out with for a community event. And when you're looking at this, take note of 2018. So here we are today in 2018. The city funded less than $1 million out of its budget in the general fund for capital improvements projects. There were a little less than $4 million requested, but that does not reflect what the actual need is, because we're required to bring forth a balanced budget and something that is attainable. So if we need a new police station, which we do, that does not show up in 2018 on that line. And it looks like things are getting a little bit better in 2019. We're projecting to have a little more than $1 million, 2020, but that red line, or the orange line, continues to increase. So what are we really talking about? As of 2017, we had identified more than $200 million of capital projects that needed to be completed. Now, that number only increases when, let's talk about streets. You can't fill a pothole or crack seal a road or overlay it when you don't have money to do the capital projects. Just like your house, if you know you need to do maintenance on the roof and you can't do maintenance on the roof and you keep delaying that preventative maintenance, what happens? Instead of a $2,000 project of fixing little pieces of your roof, you're now replacing the entire thing, which is going to be $10,000 or $12,000. Same thing with roads. So that $200 million just keeps skyrocketing off the chart. It's really fun, gloom and doom. Now let's talk about vision. So in 2017, our community development department, in coordination with the community, went through a process to adopt and update to our comprehensive plan. And in that plan, there was a vision that was identified. And this is the vision, and I'll read it for you. I do believe all of you can read, but I'm gonna read it in case you didn't bring your glasses. Durango is an authentic, diverse, and creative community living in harmony with its natural environment, pursuing economic, environmental, and social stability. So that's a great vision. It sounds like a place I'd like to live. But how are we gonna get there when we don't have the funds and we don't know what your priorities are? Okay, so now is the fun part. The little interactive piece. So you all received sticky notes when you walked in. If you did not receive sticky notes, please raise your hand and we will have a staff member bring you some. And you also need a pen. So if you don't have a pen, raise your hand. Okay, so here's how we play the game. We're going to ask you a question. And you can only write one thing per sticky note. You can use as many sticky notes as you want. If you run out, raise your hand. Okay, so are you ready? I'm going to give you about 3 to 4 minutes. And if you're really fast writers and everyone's done, we can end early. But 3 to 4 minutes to answer this question. Remember, one topic or item per sticky note. What qualities and services make for a great place to live and work? Okay, so I hope that was enough time. What I would like you to do now is take all of those and stick them in a pile and write the number 1 on top of that pile. Because at the end of this, you're going to have 3 stacks of sticky notes. And you're going to be taking them to the back of the room at the end of the meeting and posting them next to the station for each of the questions. So Scott Shine is going to take over for the next piece of this.
All right. Thank you for taking some time to reflect on that question and provide us with some input. I'm really interested to see what comes out of that process and that question. We have 2 more questions we want to ask you. We're going to drill down and get a little more specific. But before we do that, we want to provide a little bit more information about the city budget as a whole and municipal finance in Durango, so that you can understand where those lines are crossing and what the specific issue is that we need to address. So you can see up here, and also you should have all received a handout like this when you walked in. Again, if you didn't get this, please raise your hand. This is an important reference as we go through these next couple of slides. You can see on here there's 3 different buckets that city funds fall into. The general fund is really where we want to focus our conversation tonight and throughout this process. But you're all probably familiar with enterprise funds and special revenue funds as well. Enterprise funds you can think of as a fee-for-service fund. So when you pay your water bill, that fee, that money goes into the water fund to pay for water infrastructure, water maintenance. We can't take money out of the water fund to pay for police. That's a specific, dedicated enterprise fund to pay for that specific service. The other type of fund is a special revenue fund. That's a type of fund that has a very specific purpose. Usually that's approved by the voters who said, we want X, Y, or Z, and we're willing to pay a little bit more to get that. And that money is governed by that question that the voters approved. So again, if the voters approved a question to acquire open space, the city's not able to take that money and pay for streets maintenance or public safety. That has to go for that specific purpose. So the general fund, as its name implies, is what covers the rest of city operations, the general needs and administration of the city. And we're going to drill into that a little bit. This handout, like I said, gives you a little more detail about the revenue sources that come into the city and the services that are provided by those different funds. You can look across the top and understand the sources. Like I said, generally special revenue funds are some sort of a tax or a revenue that was voter approved for a specific purpose. Enterprise funds are more fees or things like your water bill to pay those specific services. Revenue for the general fund includes sales tax. The city has a small property tax that we get as well. Things like permit applications or license fees, that all goes into the general fund and funds the services and programs of the city listed there. On the back side of your handout, there's a lot more detail about all that fund does. It's really a powerhouse. It funds a lot of the things that you don't necessarily think about day in and day out, but are really crucial to have an efficient and a functional city government. So this is really helpful. I hope you'll spend some time just thinking through that. Think about how you interact with the city and what services and programs are listed there that maybe you don't think about all the time, but what would it be like if those went away or those weren't at the same level as currently? Yes, there's a question?
On the special revenue funds, can you give us sunset dates for all of these?
We can, yeah. Let's circle back to that at the end of the presentation. That's a good question. So again, think through this. Things like police, the police station, streets maintenance, plowing, and a lot of the general administration. So human resources, the finance department, city manager, city council functions, those things all come out of the general fund. And that's really the area of focus that we want to talk about tonight. Because that's where, as we saw in the earlier slide, the lines are going to cross based on our projections in the coming years. And it's also where a lot of those capital improvements are funded that are backlogged that we really want to get to make sure the community is functioning well in a great place to live. So when you're looking at a shortfall and you see something coming in the future that you're going to have to deal with, there's really 2 ways to address that issue. And we're going to ask for specific feedback from you on ways that you would propose the city address that shortfall. The first one, understanding that the existing level of service out of the general fund, those programs and those services that we provide currently, are not sustainable with the current revenue streams. I hope that picture is getting clear. That's what we started with, looking at those charts. The existing level of service can't be sustained with the existing revenue streams. So one way to address that issue is to say we need to cut back. We need to eliminate some programs or drop some services. And so we wanted to start by asking you for feedback on that. If you look at that list in that red box on your handout, are there things that you think should be cut back, services reduced, or programs eliminated? And you can take time now, and that's question number 2. Write those down if you have feedback for us related to scaling back in order to address that shortfall. If you think there should not be cuts, you can also note that as well, and we'll sort of transition and talk about other options for that with question 3. But take another couple minutes, use your sticky notes, give us some feedback on any areas, programs, or services that you would cut to live within the budget. All right. So like I said, we have 3 questions, 1 more we want to get to, and then we'll have some time for some additional question and answer. So when my wife and I are facing a budget shortfall towards the end of the month, this is where her mind goes. She talks about, oh, we got to cut back, we got to stop. It's not generally where my mind goes. I try and find opportunities, I try and find other ways to address that shortfall. And that's sort of what we want to talk about now. When you look around and you see, generally the state of the community, the infrastructure, I think we all understand there are capital improvement needs. You can see images of those here. Crumbling sidewalk that's not safe, that's not accessible. Streets that have been damaged by flooding due to improper or inadequate stormwater maintenance. And then especially how many people have been into the police department? Okay, hopefully just for a visit or something, not against your will, but the police department is very inadequate. It's very small. There's a lot of officers in there crammed into a small area. Storage for evidence and things is really tight. And so that is a major capital need that the city is facing. And as we've talked through the general fund and all that it supports, we see a lot of areas, and the community has identified, like Amber said, over $200 million in capital improvement needs for the city. And when we look at these issues and we think about how to address those, what's great is we can look back in Durango's recent past and know that when the community realizes there's a need for something to happen and agrees that that's necessary for our quality of life and to continue being a great place to live, Durango really comes through, and they rally around causes and purposes that are important. And these are just 3 examples in the recent past where the community in Durango has identified a need and then come through by supporting additional funding to make that a reality. So the rec center, Florida Road, the library, this beautiful facility we're in tonight, all of those were identified as needs by the community, and the community supported additional funding to make those happen. So it's great to think that that's a possibility. And like I said, when we're facing a budget shortfall, that's where my mind goes in my own life, and I think that's a great thing to think about as a community. What are those top priorities? What are those values that we want to rally around and make a reality? So for our 3rd question, we get to look at, if there was additional revenue to support the general fund to make up that shortfall, what services or facilities would you keep, increase, or add? So what do you see as those top priorities for yourself, for the broader community that you think should be sought after? And if there was that additional revenue source, what would you like to see in Durango? So take some time. This is the other way we can address that budget shortfall, is thinking about new sources of funding and creating new opportunities. You can think about maybe facilities you've experienced in other communities when you've traveled, gaps that you think that exist in Durango that you'd like to see filled. It's really wide open.
Thank you for taking the time to put some thought into this. And we know that you may have things that pop into your head after this meeting And we encourage you to please reach out to us and tell us what those are. And this is not your only opportunity to provide input. So we're dealing with a wicked problem, like I stated before, and I wanted to go through the process that we have laid out. And this is our timeline. So we're kicking off with this community forum today. We have a survey on virtual City Hall. So on the city's website, we have a community satisfaction survey that's running right now. So we would encourage you to please register for virtual City Hall and go on and take that survey, because it's gonna give us a lot of information about these questions. It's not the same questions, so you will not be just telling us the same thing that you've just told us. We'll continue with the community forums on April 16th, where we'll have a forum at City Hall and we'll be providing tours of the police station. So for all of you that haven't been in the police station, I would really encourage you to go. It's an eye-opening experience. So also in phase one, we'll be meeting with each of the city's boards and commissions and providing a workshop similar to this with them to gather their input. And then we're kicking off a youth engagement program. So our future is our youth, and we want to make sure that we're starting to encourage them to participate in the public process. So similar to the bookmark contest that the library and the Nighthorse School District do, we will be, or is it the Friends of the Library? Friends of the Library put on. It's a huge success, so we're not going to reinvent the wheel. And we're doing a poster contest, and that information will go out to all students in the district, and we'll have information here at the library and other facilities as well. So phase one, this first two public forums, is really community education and priority identification. Then we move into phase two in May, end of April, May. And in phase two, what we're going to do is take all of the information that we gather, all of the input that we gather from the community over the first phase, and we're going to use that information to do collaborative problem solving. So we'll get much more in depth on how we're actually going to solve this problem. So we'll have a community forum at Scott Brewing on May 17th, and then a final community forum at Carver's on June 25th. We will also be running a statistically valid survey to make sure that we know that not everyone can come to a public meeting, and we want to make sure that we're getting a valid sample of the community. So we'll be doing a mail survey through June, basically the end of May, June. In addition to that, we are seeking opportunities to meet with organizations, homeowners associations, neighborhood groups, a group of friends. Anyone that is interested in the future of Durango and the decisions that the city makes, we are more than happy to take our team. We have a team of about 30 city staff on our public engagement team to bring this information out and gather the input, because like I said, not everybody can make a meeting. So if you have a group that you belong to or folks that you know are interested, if you wouldn't mind either sharing this information with them or sharing my information, sharing that information with me, we can connect and make sure that we are really casting the broadest net that we can. After the last public meeting, the community forum will be meeting with city council, and depending on what we find, we'll be asking for direction so that we can implement whatever it is to move forward towards solving this wicked problem. As you leave here today, and we're not ready to go, so please don't get up and run, we'd like you to consider what you've learned. Again, get back to us with anything else that hits you. For the next meeting, I would put out a call to action. Please come. We're going to take the information we learned today, we're going to report back out, and then continue this process. So it won't be exactly the same thing next time, and bring some friends so we can spread the word. There's little cards like this at the front that have all the information on it. And now we're going to get into the question and answer period. So you have your 3 stacks of notes. Please hold them, because we're going to do that at the very end. But what I'm going to ask is that if you have a question, because we are videoing this to make sure that we have a solid record of everything that's said, if you could come up to the podium, give me your name and address, and then ask the question, and we will respond as best as we can. If we do not have the information at our fingertips, we will get back to you. All of the results that we get tonight will be posted on the Engage website, which is durangogov.org/engage. And I will start out with answering the first question, because we do have an answer to that first question, as I know you all have questions, so I'm waiting for this line to get really long. Okay, the 2015 half cent, which was the reauthorization of the 1999 half cent, sunsets on December 31st of 2035. The 2005 half cent sales tax sunsets on December 31st of 2026. Those are the two special taxes that we have that have been authorized and the sunset dates. Both of those taxes, if you don't know, because, well, unless you're in my shoes, why would you know exactly what they're authorized for? The 2015 half cent is, and any staff person in the audience, correct me if I get this wrong. Parks, open space, and no. It's bike ped, trails, recreation center, and the Animas River Trail. So bike ped, Animas River Trail, rec center, parks. The 2005 is open space acquisition, so parks, open space, and trails, as well as the debt service on the library and Florida Road. So it pays off the debt service on this building and Florida Road. And that one expires at the end of the year 2026, and then the bike ped, Animas River Trail, parks, rec center expires 2035, December 31st, 2035. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
I'm Kathy Sykes at 20 Primrose Circle, apartment 2003 in Three Springs. I'm curious for you why we have more marijuana stores than we do grocery stores. I noticed that since the bus is being cut in Three Springs in May, we have a new marijuana store just popped up. But we got no grocery store. We have a gas station. We got Walmart, but we can't walk to Walmart if we want to go and come back and forth.
So I can't answer the question about why we have more grocery stores than we have marijuana dispensaries. However, what I'm hearing you ask is, or tell me that there's a need for a grocery store in Three Springs.
Right, since the bus is being cut, yes, we need
Right.
something to.
And so we are working towards having a grocery vendor establish themselves out there. And we do realize that that's a need, and we have not been successful to date in securing a grocery store to build a facility there.
And also, why can't you maybe tax the marijuana stores, take some, tax them, give them, tax them, and give maybe the money you tax them for the transit buses?
I think that that could be an option, and we have Sandy up here writing that down. So I'm hearing increase in marijuana sales tax and dedicate that revenue to transit.
Yeah, because the Three Springs really, we appreciate the buses a lot out there. I mean, we really enjoy our drivers, even though the train bus is good too, but the bus drivers as well, they're really losing their jobs. And we really don't want to see our good drivers go away.
Neither do we. Thank you, Kathy. Go ahead.
My name is Lori Voss, and I live in Durango, Colorado, in an apartment.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
I want to expand on this young lady's question. Why is such a much-needed service, such as public transit, even looking at losing funding for its multiple services? This is a non-discriminatory service, meaning it services all of us, no matter our disability, gender, and so forth. One of the problems that we have as far as employment and accessibility to employment is it's hard enough to find reasonably priced housing in this town. Now tack on insurance and all the goodies that go on with affording a car, and it makes sustainable living for human beings in this town rather difficult. However, the transit center, the transportation, public transportation, is extremely affordable. And two of the primary lines, which is the Crestview line and the Three Springs, is looking at elimination. These are students, these are elderly that need to get to the hospitals, so forth and so on. And rather than eliminating services, expansion of services, I think would make a much bigger difference. One of the things that we in Durango really pride ourselves on is what a green community we are. Well, and that green is discriminatory. Not all of us ride bicycles. Not all of us are able to ride bicycles. However, with the public transportation system, accessibility for everybody is much more available. Why have not more tax dollars been allotted to non-discriminatory services, public transportation, the public recreation center, and the public library?
So what I can tell you is that the city has been facing a shortfall in the transit budget for more than 9 years.
Okay?
And, wait, hold on a second, please. And you need to understand why we're facing the situation that we are to know why we're facing the service cuts. So the Colorado Department of Transportation made a change to how they allocate the grant dollars. So what they are calling fair and equitable is resulting in about a $600,000 to $700,000 or more cut to Durango Transit. We are currently operating at a deficit and eating the fund balance from the parking fund.
Okay.
Transit is an enterprise fund, which is that yellow piece on your chart. And in an enterprise fund, the fees that come in from that fund pay for the service. So the city council made the great decision to join parking and transit into one fund, and parking pays for transit.
Okay.
So if they had not done that, we would have been facing these cuts years ago.
Okay, and then this leads me to another
Right.
question. There is federal funding, there is all kinds of granting out there that falls under transportation
Right.
as well as environmental. Why have these grants not been looked?
They
What you
have.
have said, you find funding
Yeah.
for public art that, and it's been obvious on social media as well as the Durango Herald, that the vast majority of this town is not pro-public art. And yet we have had several pieces that have had, and these are thousands of dollars into the tens of thousands of dollars on pieces of art that the vast majority of us did not want. The vast majority of us do, however, want public transportation, okay? And there can somehow be found wording that public transportation is much more valuable to the revitalization of not only Durango proper, but to La Plata County than your public art.
If transportation doesn't exist, you have no way to access the goods and services. You cannot get to education, you cannot get to healthcare, you cannot get to the grocery store, you cannot get to social activities, you cannot get to work. Trust me, I clearly understand that. We have brought in over $13 million for the public transit system in comparison to the perhaps maybe $100,000 that's been brought in for public art. That, as you know, it sounds like you might have written grants in a previous life or right now, or have experience with the grant programs because you are aware that the funding exists. As you know, the eligibility requirements for those are extraordinarily slim. So you have, here's my tiny little box, and it has to fit in that box. So the city of Durango was more successful than any other agency in the entire state of Colorado at obtaining grant funding. And that's why we were able to continue running our program. However, without any thought for our residents, the policy was changed. And there's nothing we can do about it. We obtained more grants from more funding sources than any other agency in the state. And we have federal awards, the best transit system in the United States for a rural agency. That is not something that comes easy. Time and time and time again, we have been the medium-sized transit agency in the state. So it's not because we're not performing. It's not because it's not needed, and it's not because the community doesn't want it. I, for the last 8 years, have run public processes in this community around transit, around transportation. And at every single meeting, I heard from our community exactly what you said. We want expansion of service, we want shorter headways, we want 7 days a week and longer hours. Because, yes, when you look at transportation, you want less than 45% of your income to be spent on transportation and housing. We do not have that in Durango or La Plata County. So what I'm hearing from you, which relates to this conversation, is priority is funding for transportation. And that is something that can go on the board. That is potentially one of the answers to the third question. Please find revenue to fund this transportation.
And to make sure that I understand, as well as the other individuals here, so we're not talking that this is a city or county issue. Where the shortfall is coming from is because the state of Colorado
For transit.
has, for whatever reason, not seen the priority of this.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Anyone else?
My name is Barb Bell. I live at 2615 North College Drive. I have probably more comments maybe than questions.
Okay.
So when the post-tax thing was passed, my understanding was that the original tax was going to sunset in 2019.
Correct.
right?
Yes.
At that time, I feel like the city as a whole really was not very honest with the fact that they knew we were going to need higher fees for water and for sewer. We were looking at expanding the airport. All of these things were going on, but it was almost like there was a conspiracy, I would say, to get this thing pushed through before all of these other expenses were brought to everyone's attention. So my first question would be, would it be possible to re-vote on this tax to see if those tax funds could be applied to the general fund instead of to post? If the answer is no, we can't re-vote, then I would love to suggest moving all of the Parks and Rec expenses over to the special taxing district, because once we get finished doing everything we're planning to do with Lake Nighthorse, with all of the other, with new bike BMX areas, new bike parks, all of these things based on the surveys that were just sent out about what we want, not what we need, but what we want. I don't know if that was part of your red line expenditures as the years go up, because as things sunset with these taxes, there's going to be no way that we could ever eliminate the tax, because we're going to have to do maintenance on everything that we are currently planning to build, create, and all of those things. So I feel like part of what we need to do is figure out what we need and get away from what we want. And I feel like the city, unfortunately, often makes decisions on what we want. On Florida Road, we needed the road. We really didn't need the medians with all the trees and everything else. We have them, they're beautiful. Did we need to spend the money on those things when we are looking at infrastructure that is failing, water lines that are breaking, the sewer plant, and everything else coming up for things that we actually need? And it's the services that the government should be supplying for the residents. as opposed to what we want.
So I think to address that, that is the purpose of this process. Like I said early on, this is a public process like we've never done before. And so when you have siloed processes, which are fine because we need to do planning, we need to know what our vision is. So multimodal transportation plan, we looked at transportation and that was our purview. When you looked at the Parks and Rec strategic plan, that's their purview. So you're going to see that it's not, what we're looking at now is when you've got these great plans, these visions that all meet this beautiful, fabulous vision of what this community can be. But in order to get there, we're gonna have to make these tough choices like you're saying. And that is the point of this process, to have the very open and honest conversation of there's more than one need here, there's a lot of needs, and they're fighting for the same dollar. In response to your question about the tax, the 1999 half-cent sales tax was reauthorized in 2015. It was changed in the eligible activities so that bicycle and pedestrian were included in that. They were not previously eligible activities. So yes, a process could be taken forward to reauthorize those taxes with different eligible projects. In terms of water and sewer, again, it's enterprise fund, so we have the fees. So little bit different piece of the conversation, but in the whole, yes, but talking about what our needs are, we are.
It was more a matter of informing the public about what was known by
Staff.
enough people within the city government.
Okay.
That was not made very public.
Okay.
When the vote happened on this extension for the tax.
And she made a really fantastic point. Bike trails are great. We are absolutely number one
Yep.
for our bicycle events. However, the things that we are promoting and that we are putting expenditures on are requiring maintenance, and not just maintenance, but an expensive amount of maintenance.
Right.
And these things, she really brought up some fantastic points on, we are spending more money on what we want than what we need, and what is most effective for all of us, rather than be select few. We need to concentrate more on us as a whole than us as a split.
Agreed. And I think we hear that loud and clear, and that was really the purpose of question number 2. So thank you. Does anyone else have the desire to come to the podium?
Darren White, 373 East Valley View Lane, Bayfield. How about the city make it a higher priority to pay all of its workers a living wage? That will be a very good economic boost and create more revenue. Thrive Living Wage Coalition has 100, exactly 100 businesses certified in the city of Durango within the city limits. That brings in an extra $112,000 per year in revenue to the city. So we talk about a lot of things, but what we're really need to consider is people, and I believe that should be at the highest priority is your workers.
Thank you. So going back to that, in order to pay those employees, that would change, and it's it's part-time employees in Parks and Recreation that aren't meeting that living wage, and that's why we have been unable to get the certification of a living wage employer. Our full-time staff are making a living wage. There's 400, I believe, plus part-time employees in Parks and Recreation that are making the minimum wage that does not meet those standards. But that, again, would be a hit to the general fund, and that would move that line. So if there was additional revenue, I think we have another comment for that board, number 3. Hold on, please. And then you can come back up to the podium.
Rachel Taylor. My question, we've sort of not addressed the fact that we're a changing community and that we have our internal components, but we also are very much influenced by tourism. and lately by marijuana tourism. We're in the Four Corners, and we have enormous amounts of traffic coming solely for that purpose, and in addition to our normal tourism. So my question to you is, you mentioned not reinventing the wheel, and I know case studies are done on other locations who go through these sorts of growing pains. But my question to you all, has a study been done on how that has impacted us directly, Durango, in revenue from marijuana, but also in how it's impacted the police force, the sheriff's department, other components that are causing our budget to be strained? And I'm representing Habitat here too, but I know I've looked at other cities, and there's lodging taxes. They have taxes that instead of fair share, they're taxing the people that are causing the real estate value to go up. And I was just in a town, and a fourth of my hotel bill was taxes. And it startled me, and I found myself complaining, but then I sat in my car with my children, and I thought, wait, this is what I would advocate for, is that we sort of place some of these responsibilities, instead of on the population that resides here, on the population that's coming through here. And I think there's enough case studies out that can prove to Chamber of Commerce and other businesses that it has worked, and there are places thriving, and they still have lodging taxes. So my question to you is has that been done as part of a city review of how those impacts are and what the potential of using them are here in Durango?
There is not an official study that has been conducted that's, gone through the process that we would have for a study. However, we do collect information on sales tax by sector, and we see the financial impact in terms of sales tax that the marijuana industry is having on Durango. To be perfectly honest, that sales tax is keeping us afloat. That's a good thing for us right now. Those lines haven't crossed yet, and so that tax is helping keep those lines separated. In terms of the impact on public safety, yes, there has been an impact, but I don't have an official study, and I can't report out on what those results are as of today. But all of that information is being looked at and it's one of those things that would need to be compiled. In terms of lodging tax, that is an option that we can definitely stick up on the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Donna Mae, and then if you want to can you come forward? Yeah, go ahead, just to the podium, and then.
My name is Donna Mae Bacot, and I'm at 4538 County Road, 250. I have a couple of comments and also questions. I'm aware that there was a proposal to spend $900 million for the bridge that goes nowhere to do a highway. I was wondering if you were to invest in some tiny shelters that Fort Lewis College students are studying. Each one of those would cost less than $15,000 if it's fully utilized. So you have toilet, kitchenette, shower, and a sink. If you were able to use maybe $500,000, you could house people that are creating problems on the Hill. I want to know if the council or any of the city people have considered where to put these people and how will you fund it. But the other thing too is that I know for a fact National Low-Income Housing Coalition says that in La Plata County, the housing wage, meaning that when you are cost burdened, you have to earn $18.60 for a 2-bedroom and work 2 jobs. We have 300 people in this county that do not have a house because they can't afford it. They don't have enough money because they're paying more than 30% of their income on housing. Either we look at maybe get the real estate business people together and say, how about let's rethink your charges. You don't give a person that just came out of jail You don't allow him to live or enter into an apartment because he has a record. They've served their time. Or you have a person that just lost their job, picked up a new one, and in a couple of months, they were able to afford the month's rent of $970 or $1,000. But you're asking them to put a deposit of first and last and a security deposit or a pet deposit. Community Compassion Outreach brought a forum where Donald Burns Center on Poverty and Homelessness, spoke, and he agrees with us that yes, faith-based people might have to be holding the bag to create shelters and housing. We are advocating shelters and housing for the homeless. Once we do that, once we put them into an organized location, you're going to see a reduction in crime, you're going to see a reduction in panhandling. So I want to know if the city has decided whether to address that, or are we leaving it up to a county problem?
Okay, so I heard take money from the bridge to nowhere and pay for homelessness. That money goes to CDOT. Again, it goes back to the grant funds. There's absolutely nothing to do. It's in the transportation authorization. It's money, and it says you can use this money for a bridge. Period. If it's not for a bridge, you don't get it. And it's competitive against other areas in the state, and it's competitive against other states. So that money is not our money, for one, and two, it's not money that would be eligible for what you're talking about. So the money is one thing. The issue is something else. So yes, we are facing issues related to homelessness in our community, as are many communities across the United States. When you look at the rate of homelessness, it's not growing like this, it's growing like this. Not just in Durango, across the United States. And it is a priority for City Council. They are working diligently on finding a solution. There is no silver bullet. You cannot say that if you have a camp, we win, we're done. That doesn't work. You can't say, hey, we can shelter people here in whatever form. It can be tiny houses, it can be tents, it can be whatever it is for sheltering.
You need wraparound services.
Right, it's not a silver bullet. So there are 3 issues that we're dealing with. We're looking at the immediate need. We have public health risk with fire danger where the current camp is located. If a fire starts, with current conditions and the lack of precipitation that we've had, the entire Crestview neighborhood may not look the same. Okay? Second piece, it's not just one population like you referred to. We've got multiple demographic up there. You have people that I have spoken with, you've spoken with. If I told them, here, you can stay in this shelter and you have a bathroom and a kitchen and a toilet, they would say, no, I don't want to, I'm home for you. There are not very many of them, and please let me finish. I let you finish. Okay? You have some that are down on their luck, and they need help.
Mm-hmm.
It is the right thing to do to find a way as a community, and I would say joint city and county, because it's not just the city's problem and it's not just the county's problem. It is a community problem. So there are many things that we need to work on. There are many different demographics within the population that are homeless today and that continue to grow that we need to address, and City Council is working on it. But at this point in time, we do not have clear direction. We do not have marching orders to say, go do this now, but it is in process.
Okay, I want to verify that last week, Wednesday evening, Fort Lewis College engineering students took a survey to Manna Kitchen
Great.
when they were having dinner. There was a survey asking them, would you rather have a tent or a tiny shelter? And most of them, if not all, said yes. So they're not rejecting, they're just saying, we would like that opportunity. Yes, we would love that. But what we're planning and what we're hoping that we can get city partnership in, even the forestry has land that they may have that could become a partnership with the city and county. And okay, but I think what our concern is that, you know, we can say we don't have land,
Right.
we can say we don't know where to put them, but we know that there are shelters that can go up in 2 days.
And that may be part of the solution, and we need to continue working on the
Okay,
homeless
okay, thank you.
issues that exist in the community. Does anyone, perfect, I was like, where's my purple jacket person?
Hi, I'm Debbie Kelb. I live at 2149 County Road, 309A.
Great.
And my interest in this area is Lake Nighthorse.
Okay.
And it's because I've been in parks and tourism for a number of years. And I missed the meetings about Lake Nighthorse, and I was just wondering if there has been any plans, or has there been any sight into the idea that maybe day use fees or camp fees or whatever could make money for the area? Because Lake Nighthorse, being so close into Durango, can really keep visiting dollars in town. I do tours to Silverton, and I'm constantly talking about everything along the way. I would like to have some more stuff to talk about and offer here in Durango to get people excited about.
Perfect. Yes, fees are part of the plan. Everything is not 100% solidified at that point, but if you wanted to send an email, we'll make sure that you're looped into that group. If you could I can give you a card. We'll make sure that you're looped into that group and can get the most up-to-date information from our Parks and Rec Director.
Thank you.
Sure. So I would love to continue the conversation, and we can, but I'm sure that you all have things to do. It's not quite 7, so I might get you out of here early. But if you do have to leave and you don't want to participate in the rest of the question and answer, if you could please remember to take your sticky note stacks to questions 1, 2, and 3 in the back, so that we can make sure that we have a comprehensive recording that then we can compile together. But I'm welcoming more conversation if the group would like to.